What's up, guys? This is the Prime Design Podcast. I'm Mitra Kutamahanina,
And I'm Ryan Srinivasam.
and we are two halves at the moment of Cerberus Trillion, an independent video game studio. And we are a studio that prides ourselves on making games that, maybe to our detriment, two or more genres or components of other games. Try to be a little experimental, a little crazy, a little funky. But for our podcast, the reason we're doing this podcast and why it's called the Prime Design Podcast is we are trying to disseminate some important info about game design to the world so that people make better games, enjoy games more, and look at it as an art rather than some plaything, I guess. And the person responsible for this is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Richard Terrell, who curated the blog that we're going to pull our lesson plan from, as well as he's doing work currently on designoriented.net. So go check out designoriented.net, and check out his previous blog, the Critical Gaming Network, online. But we're taking from the Game Design 101 portion of that blog.
Yeah. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about Mario Melodies Interplay Part 2. Last week, we discussed Interplay Part 1, so go check that out if you haven't already seen it. And this week, it's going to be kind of important to have the blog in front of you because there's a few visuals that we're going to be talking about. So if you get a chance, go and pull that up if you're trying to follow along.
Yeah, or you could follow along later, but we're just gonna plow through here. So today, let me back up. Part 1, we outlined what Interplay was, what that means in games, and as a bit of a refresher, Interplay is really just the interaction between various mechanics in a game. And good interplay allows for depth in terms of the amount of actual interactions that happen between a low number of mechanics versus just complexity and having 100 mechanics at once. I feel like you could have, complexity and depth at the same time, but I feel like depth is a little more important. So we'll touch on that today as well, using Super Mario Bros. As an example. So in Super Mario Bros., the order of mechanics are as follows. And these are from the... Actually, you know what? I'm just going to say them, and you guys can decide what the order is. But first is the idle position. So it's just Mario just standing there doing nothing. And then the primary mechanic, which is jumping. And then coming after that, second level is running, ducking, sliding, swimming, and throwing fireballs. And third is the Starman power-up and the Koopa Shell attacks.
Now we're going to be talking about how the environment interacts with the interplay during gameplay. So many of you guys should be familiar with Mario by now. We've talked a lot about it. So there are the bricks in the game, which you jump into or bump into in some way, and then they will either break or not break. And in any time that you interact with those bricks, you'll then be rebounded back quickly. So it'll kind of change the way that you move, and you have to be mindful of that if you're, got enemies nearby or things like that. So next is the fire bar, which can be ducked if there's a small gap between the fireball and the floor. Watch out for that guy. So sounds
oh my
spicy.
God. Very, very spicy.
Next is the spring, which will shoot Mario up and or very short. Next is the spring, which can throw Mario into the air, or you can create a short jump by timing a jump as you jump onto the spring. Next is a pulley platform, which will move Mario according to where his weight is, and it's just a simple pulley system. Then there are water currents, which will pull Mario downward or in certain directions. It's invisible, and you just have to swim against it to move around through it. Next is the falling platform, which will start falling when you stand on it. Pretty simple. So next is bullet bill. At a certain distance away from the cannon, the bullet bills are going to be fired. Once you get close enough, the bullets will stop being fired, but the bullets will continue to travel through solid parts of the stages, so they will creep up on you if you're not keeping an eye out for them. And then the last one is pipes. So you can enter some pipes. Other pipes contain piranha flowers, which will come out when Mario is a certain distance away, kind of like the bullet bill is. When Mario gets up close to it, though, nothing's going to come out.
So that's the environment, and those all kind of they're dispersed throughout the level and makes it interesting. So now, moving through the levels of Mario, the majority of the level elements only feature one level of interplay. So the details that we're going to list in a second work with the level elements to combine. They combine to create higher levels of interplay. So, for example, if you're familiar with Mario, you're definitely familiar with the Goomba. It's like a little mushroom who's always pissed off at the world, and he just walks in one direction. Like, it's literally the simplest thing ever. But he's not exactly the simplest thing ever because of his simple movement combined with the environment can create some nice challenges for the player. So, as we all know, the Goomba travels slowly in one direction. But when it hits a wall or an obstacle or something that's not hostile, it'll just change direction. And so they can be seen as something easy because you can just wait for them to fall off the level. You can just jump over them or you can just jump on them. But those become harder when there's bricks above you or there's a Koopa to your left or something like that. So it can offer some difficulty. So there are ways that the Goomba can still evade you as an enemy. So, for example, when you throw fireballs at it, the fireballs bounce in such a way that it's possible to bounce it over the Goomba if you don't time it correctly. As well as if you're Big Mario and you attack Goombas from, let's say you're underneath a platform and you start hitting the bricks above you. If you break the bricks, the Goombas can still land on top of you. So even if you get the first one, there may be another one that can just fall on your head and then kill you. As well as if there's multiple Goombas, killing one Goomba might cause the other Goomba to rebound and attack you. So their numbers, a single Goomba is really not that bad, but if you start getting like 3 Goombas, 2 Goombas, then we have a problem. The same thing is the Koopas also seem simple, but once they can fly, shit gets real, I would say. So there's one way to kind of stop the pair-wing Koopa, and that's the Koopa that can fly, or the Para-Koopa, sorry. And that's by jumping on top of it. And so you'll de-wing it and make it a regular Koopa again. And then as soon as it falls from de-winging, it'll start walking in your direction. So there are 2 types of Koopas. There are green Koopas and red Koopas. And green Koopas just walk like Goombas do. They'll just walk in one direction. If they fall off the ledge, they fall off the ledge. But red Koopas are just a bit smarter, and when they see the ledge, they'll turn around. And so they can't really kill themselves. You have to kill them. And so the only way to get a Koopa or attack a Koopa is to jump on it or bump them from underneath the platform. But you can't actually kill the Koopa like you can kill the Goombas just by jumping on them. And they have this defense mechanism of sliding into their shell after it's been attacked, but that only lasts a few seconds and then it'll wake back up. And then you have to attack it again. Even if when they wake up, they may walk in your direction. Actually, it will walk in your direction. It will walk in your direction when it wakes up, even if it wasn't looking at you before. So after you kill a Koopa, that's not the end of the story. So one thing you can do to counteract this is when it's sleeping in the shell, you jump on it or you kick it, and then the shell will fly off the stage, and at the same time, you can use that to hit other enemies. And even when you jump on the shell itself has other interplay. So if it hits a wall, it'll bounce back toward you. And now it's a threat and not something helpful. which means that you'll have to jump on it to change its direction or get it off the stage. Or you find another shell to kick into that moving shell, and then you KO them both. So just explaining this is difficult, and once you play it, you'll understand. But it just breaking this down really shows how wonderfully designed the game was. So there's a lot more enemies, and there's a lot more to look at. Like there's the Bowser, there's the throwing, like the Hammer Bros. There's a lot more, but we'll get into that later, and I think we'll get into that in the next one. So there are some photos here, some pictures, and I think breaking them down just a little bit will be kind of helpful. So looking at this first picture, it has the interplay levels of the environment kind of displayed there. So what it's showing is that for all the numbers also correspond to the order of mechanics that we positioned in the beginning. So idle position 0, jumping is 1, run, duck, slide, swim, and throwing fireballs is 2, and then the Starman power-up and Koopa Shell attacks is 3. So if you look at this diagram, all the ones, anything that's labeled 1 is showing you like what Mario's jump how it can affect the environment. So in the first couple, he's like hitting some of the question mark golden blocks things to get coins. He'll hit wooden blocks. He'll jump to like land on the flag at the end of the level. He'll jump onto platforms that fall up and down. And then his idle position is just him like just chilling on some platforms and whatnot. And then you can see that the run, duck, slide, swim, and throwing fireballs, those are all the, like there's one where he's ducking a fire bar, and then there's others where he's jumping to get coins and whatnot. So that's just showing Mario's interaction with the environment. The second one is showing how the Goomba, how Mario can interact with the Goomba, and what the Goomba's allowed to do. So if you can look, the Goomba's on the left, and there's like multiple rings, and these rings dictate like each level of interplay. So the first one is like Mario can jump on the Goomba, around the Goomba, bounce the Goomba from the bottom, and things like that. And then it gets more complicated because there's an effect that happens after each of those actions. So even if you jump over, let's say you knock a Goomba from underneath, so he falls off the platform, he can still kill you if there's another Goomba trailing him, and that's that second layer. So Mario still has to be ready for the second Goomba, maybe jumping twice or just moving out the way. And then there's another third layer, but you guys can explore that one. And there's a similar chart for Koopas in the third part. But once again, I think you guys should follow along in the blog so that you understand and can kind of see these as you read it. See these images as you read it. It'll fit a little better. So, excuse me. So that's the lesson for today. Next week, I believe we're moving into more complicated aspects of Super Mario Bros. Maybe some Hammer Bros are going to be in there. Maybe Bowser's in there. I'm not actually really sure. I really should know, but I don't. But stay tuned. There's more to come. That's the lesson for today. So coming up, we have a segment where we pick a game that we've played before in our lives and we just talk about like a cool mechanic or something, a design element that really made the play experience good or bad. And I think one for me, it's an old game. It's on the N64, Banjo and Kazooie. So Banjo and Kazooie is a game where the main character is this like bear, and he wears this backpack all the time, and inside the backpack there's it's Kazooie. So Banjo's the bear, Kazooie is this bird, and the bird is in the backpack. And throughout the game, there's many different ways that you can interact with the environment. So one of them is Kazooie can like literally carry Banjo, and Kazooie flies, and you like control him as he's flying in the air and shit, and like grabbing certain feathers and whatnot and stuff cool like that. But I would say one design element that I thought was really cool in that game are the puzzles. Because the game is about running around and hitting enemies at certain points, but then there's certain elements of the game where it's like, you can take as long as you want here, and you just have to think about the puzzles and like figure it out. And you can't go past this. There aren't cheat codes. I mean, of course you can look it up and find out how to do it, but I appreciate that there are some like puzzle elements because I remember playing Donkey Kong 64, and that game is just about running around and grabbing shit. Like maybe there's a puzzle here and there and a boss fight here and there, but I think Banjo-Kazooie really made a different experience that forced you to think and not just quote unquote play. And I really appreciated that. So today is something special because we have an interview with a friend of mine from St. Olaf who is interested in games, the game industry, and as so we'll pass it on to him now. So this is Jakob Otten. Please introduce yourself, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mita. Good to be on the show. And I'm Jakob. I go to school with Mita, and I'm going to graduate this year, seniors 2019. And I've just been a gamer my entire life. So when I heard that you guys did this podcast and this design blog, I was like, that's a dream come true. That's amazing. I would love to listen. And so I was really excited when you invited me over. So thank you. Appreciate it.
We're just going to start off with if you could tell the audience a bit about yourself, like what you're majoring, what you're doing.
Sure. So I'm majoring in economics and management, which is completely the business route at my school. However, I had a mid-school crisis where I think halfway through my sophomore year, I was just thinking to myself, I'm definitely interested in business, but what is the point of paying money to graduate from school if I'm not going to at least try to pursue my dreams? And my dream was essentially realizing, hey, I love video games and it would be super cool to make one. So I pivoted halfway through and I decided I'll stick with my major, but I'm going to start networking, learning, playing more games, which was hard because I had been playing a ton of games in high school. So set down this path, and here I am today. I've gone to a few different gaming conventions. I've participated in a few game jams. I even studied abroad last semester and studied gaming in Copenhagen. And during that time, I worked at a gaming studio as well in Copenhagen. So I got a great first exposure to the gaming industry, helped solidify that I was going down the right path. So that's how I got to where I am today.
All right. So what's your favorite game that you played and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. So my own personal taste in genre, I think stories are my favorite part of games and narratives. And that would bring me into any of the RPG areas of gaming. I grew up playing Pokemon. I had my first exposure to games like Dragon Age Origins and Mass Effect, which are sweet RPG games by BioWare. I highly recommend people checking them out. When I was young, and those made a huge impression on me, and they've shaped how I've judged games. So I'd say Dragon Age Origins is my favorite game experience because of the fact that it was the first game where I had played something where my choices actually had an impact on the story, the outcome of the story. It was a mind-blowing concept at the time, and now we have all these games trying to put that mechanic into their gameplay. But Dragon Age Origins did it for me, and it wasn't just because of that story mechanic, but it was because of the really great dialogue and characters. Now, I'm a huge fan of believable story, believable character motivations, and I think some of the characters in that game are still the most memorable characters I've ever had in a video game, like Alistair and Liliana and everyone's favorite, the Witch of the Wild. So yeah, that's gonna be my favorite game.
Yeah, I know BioWare does some amazing stuff. I know Mass Effect was one of my favorite games, and still is. It was just tons of fun, and the lore that they can do, the world building is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and the soundtrack. I mean,
oh yeah, love that soundtrack.
Yeah, great soundtrack. So in this, you may have to, perhaps you may or may not have to take time to think about this, but what would you say if you could think about all the games you played? What would be your favorite mechanic and why? It doesn't have to be a good one. It's just what's your favorite one?
Off the top of my head, favorite mechanic. Now this is this is just my current favorite mechanic because it's fresh on my mind. That's the Nemesis system from games like Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, the Lord of the Rings games. When I first saw my friend like playing that game and having it like having like an orc come up to him and essentially be like, "Oh, I've met you before." Like it made the battle so much cooler because suddenly we had this context, we had more motivations going into the fight to kill this orc. Especially in the newest one where you can actually like you can get like uh you could like kill an orc or something and it'll come back later and turn out to have not died or survived. It just makes for really epic moments. And that would have to be my favorite mechanic right now for just small little pieces of dialogue and details of lore like that can make a fight 10 times better and more interesting somehow just with that little switch. So yeah.
Yeah, another game that I really need to check out. I kind of missed that whole the Shadow of Mordor and all that stuff. Um, yeah, so I know you said you had some experience making games in the past and with game jams and everything. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of like what you made, what tools you used, and like what experiences you had doing all that?
Sure. So I'm coming from a non computer science background. I've taken a few computer science courses, trying to get myself up to speed. By no means do I consider myself an expert. So when I set out making these games, the very first time I did it for class in my computer science principles class, and none of us had ever had any experience. We were using Python, and the way the project went was we literally taught ourselves how to make a game from start to finish in Python without any tools, meaning we made our own game engine. Looking back, I'm like, how did we possibly do that? Because when you start working with modern game tools like Unity or Unreal, they've done all this stuff in the background for you. Like the game is going to run. We literally designed like our game loop that was constantly running in the background, and we made this really amazing shitty game. Uh, that was a super fun experience, and it was really important because it helped me see exactly the way that games are always running in the background. Now that I can say I have developed my own game engine. I put that in quotations because it was horrible. It ran so slow. We probably had like 15 frames per second because of how bogged down it was. Um, but it really makes me appreciate how great tools like Unity or even Game Maker are. And that I'll go on to just mention at the game jams I did, at the class I did, we used Unity and we just learned that top level, I would say, scripting language. For those who've never used Unity, it's a tool that helps you make games, and you have to code into Unity in C sharp, which is a computer programming language. It's very beginner friendly. There are click and drag sort of interactions, but even still, it was complex. And going to those game jams, man, I was slow. I could do very little because it was a lot for me to comprehend. So I was able to specialize more in the game design and essentially mechanics department. So I was able to work with our team to say, well, here's what we need done in the game. Here's how the effect should play out, and here's the direction the game is going. And I was able to rely on people who had more coding backgrounds to handle some of the essentially implementation of those things. And we had a great system. We had these people who were very comfortable with that, maybe weren't as comfortable with the creative or design mechanic elements of the game. So we were able to complement each other that way, going through the game design class and going through our game jams.
Wow. Yeah, that's really impressive to build something like that in Python. Because yeah, I mean Unity itself can be confusing, so it's like starting from the ground up like that is really, really impressive.
Yeah, so you mentioned you worked in Copenhagen last semester, or was it last semester? Yeah, last semester, and the experience you had with the game industry in Europe and how that um, like works and whatnot, and what you experience, insights you gain. So if you could just speak about that for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just preface all of this by saying I'm coming in from having almost no support from my school or people I know and trying to get into games, meaning people just at my school and people I know just don't really know anyone in games. So I definitely want to give a shout out to all people, including my dudes here, trying to do stuff like this and get started in the career, because I'll be honest, it's really tough to get into. I mean, I'm still not even into it. Like, I had one job at a studio doing some marketing. It's very much up in the air, if I'll be able to be competitive enough to get in. So just want to give a shout out to all those people hustling and trying to get in. Keep it up. Like, the only way is just like hard work and just being creative, listening to stuff and doing stuff like this. So power to you. But working in the industry, I was really lucky. They posted a job posting on the Facebook group for my school I was studying at. It was called DIS Copenhagen, and they were looking for 2 students who knew how to do marketing because they wanted to market their game. So not even traditional game like roles as you would think of the small indie studio. So that fit really well with my economics background. I'm very much specialized down the marketing side of things. So got the job, worked there. I'd say first of all, the experience was amazing. I loved the game studio I worked for. I worked for Fantastic Yes. They make puzzle games. Their game currently released is called Returner 77. It's trying to essentially be a mobile game that delivers cinematic AAA level graphics and stories and narratives. It's a cool mission, and I got behind that really well. I really loved my coworkers, and just I was struck by how relaxed and fluid the whole environment was. I mean, it was an agile framework that they were using for their game development process. So that literally meant we had lots of team meetings. We went by weekly sprints to find out what needed to be done. If stuff was falling behind, you just offloaded some more people who would finish to help out. It's really cool to see how this small group of people was able to work really quickly and iteratively. And it was an efficient place. They pump out games really fast. That's their entire philosophy. They want to make a lot of quick, high-quality mobile games by developing almost like an assembly line approach where all they need to add the real legwork in is making a differential narrative every single time. So I really loved the atmosphere there. Things that surprised me also might have been things that were just inherent to the Danish working environment too, but it was definitely that laid back atmosphere. I felt so comfortable. Like, I never had to like dress up at all. Like, they'd even like crack open beers on the afternoons when people have been like working late. That could just be like the startup atmosphere too. So, but it was a really great experience, and working for a startup in the gaming industry. I mean, it's going to be hard going back to anything else outside of that, just because of the relationships. My biggest criticism, and this isn't specifically at Fantastic Yes, because I didn't really see it that much, and maybe I was insulated. I'm not sure, but the gaming industry I know has a lot of problems with gender equality as far as like women specifically and their work in the industry. And there's been a lot of big news articles. I mean, you hear about it at Riot most recently in the big news. Just not friendly, more toxic environments for women to work in. I can see how that could be something playing into even at the smallest level of the game studio at Fantastic Yes. I even noticed just some of the things some of the guys would say. I'm like, there are other ladies here, like, they're not going to want to hear you guys making like rape jokes, like that. They'd consider that something that was acceptable. So I definitely see this as a big problem in the industry, not only at the small micro level, but also at like the macro level in the big industries. So that is probably the biggest conflict I have as far as interest in going into the gaming industry. And I guess my entire philosophy is if I was ever to make it into the industry, I'd really want to do whatever I can, especially in my position, to help dissipate and spread awareness and education on that on that problem. That was a very long-winded answer to my experience. Sorry about that.
No, that was good. That was good.
Those are good conversations that we need to have for sure. So yeah.
Yeah. Especially in this industry, it's even the people who play it, it seems predominantly male.
Yeah.
It's almost especially in some games, like some games are extremely sexist and misogynistic and not the greatest things that humans have ever made, but
yeah. Also, so you're talking about the startup. I'll say, so I worked at a mid-sized software company, and it was kind of the same vibe. They used the Agile framework. They still cracked open beers on Friday afternoon when everything was going well. They had ping pong tables and all that. So I think that startup style, it can definitely continue into larger companies. So yeah, something to look forward to.
oh yeah. So now moving on. The last thing we're going to talk about today is there's a video on YouTube came out really recently,
2 weeks ago-ish.
2 weeks ago-ish.
Yeah.
And it's a video that compares video game maps, and it's like a size comparison. We have no way of you just got to go and find this video and watch it.
We'll put the link in the description for the podcast. But it's all of the video games, from what Elder Scrolls 2 up through like Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which released like 2-ish weeks ago or something like that. So check out this video. It's got the actual kind of like life size of the maps, and it just continuously zooms out, going from what I think the first one's Assassin's Creed Syndicate, going all the way up to Elder Scrolls 2, which is the largest map, which blows my mind because that's what that game was from, like 96 or something.
Something like that.
Yeah, and it uses procedural generation to create this enormous map, which is unreal considering that we've in the past few years with like No Man's Sky, we've had kind of a resurgence in procedural generation or so yeah, that just blows my mind that a game back then was doing that and creates such a large game world.
Yeah, I thinking that too is just for me the question is why make a game map that large if it's just emptiness. Like, okay, first of all, I haven't played Daggerfall, but seeing as how it was made like over 20 years ago, part of me is like, what is in that map? It's procedurally generated, but like, what are you doing? What is being done on the map? You know what I mean? Like, I'd be fine if that map was the size, if the maps from back then to the maps now grew in size, because there's more to do in a larger map because we have better ways of there's more things you can do now. Like, if you played Assassin's Creed Odyssey in a map that large, I feel like it'd be bonkers, personally. But no, I agree. It's having a map that big is pretty sick.
Plus, I mean, you like Star Citizen, things like that are coming out where they have like entire universes, and the planets are procedurally generated, but you also have NPCs and things like that. So I think nowadays we have the technology to make a map that big really engaging, where they may not have had that in Daggerfall back in the day. So
that definitely blows my mind too, to hear that Elder Scrolls 2 had the largest map of all the Elder Scrolls to date. I just started playing Skyrim yesterday and was just going like, wow, this is pretty impressive for, I think it was like 2011 when it came out. I mean, this is a huge map. Playing it now though and comparing it to Assassin's Creed Shadow of War, like I'm still even saying, wow, it's kind of weird that like I'm in the middle of the map, but I can see all the way to the end of the map. Like, it feels almost a little bit small compared to these other ones, but maybe that's not a problem. And I was starting to wonder about that, but I need to check out Elder Scrolls 2 to see how big this map is. Like, it's ridiculous that their second game was bigger to scale than Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim to date.
Yeah, and Mita, we did the math on how long it takes so I looked up a playthrough of a guy walking all the way across the map, and I don't know what the exact figure was for how many hours it took. Mita, you remember?
I think we estimated if there were 14 videos and there was one video that was like 8 hours, and the rest of them averaged like 4.5. So I guess we came out at a number. It was like 70, like 65, 70 hours to walk across the Daggerfall map.
And
so we estimated at like, was it 3 miles an hour? 3 miles an hour for a walking speed, or maybe a little more. And then you do the math, blah, blah, blah. And it should take, what was the mileage? It was like a 200 mile or 200 kilometer map. No, it was like 200 kilometers.
Yeah, it was like a couple days walk.
Yeah, a couple days walk.
And the map is it's like half the size of Great Britain. So we just kind of put two things on Google Maps to get like an equivalent thing. And so it'd be walking like half the size of the main island in I guess Great Britain, because so crazy. It's just crazy.
No, it's absolutely crazy. But that's what we hopefully games get, I don't know if I want to say hopefully games get bigger. Considering that, for example, the Red Dead Redemption, like the file size to download it, it's like nearing 100 gigabytes.
Yeah, it was like 92.5.
It's getting to the point we're gonna be playing like terabyte sized games at some point, and for me, I don't want games to get bigger. For that, they're gonna have to be like online experiences where it's all servered and no one has to hold on to it, because we can't physically hold on to that much data.
Yeah, we just
too
have to stream
expensive.
it.
Yeah, we just have to stream it. Oh, yeah. But it's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the show. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully we have more interviews coming up. We don't have anything lined up yet. We should really make a schedule. But for sure, we're going to have another podcast next week, continuing the Mario Melodies. Hopefully there's Interplay 3, I believe. I don't think the title has changed. But it should be Interplay 3. And we'll continue with that, with more game news, whatever we find. So we're on every social media imaginable. We're on Twitter at Cerberus Trilly 2. That's CERBERUS TRILLI 2, and that's the number 2, not TOO or TWO or TO.
Yeah. That's the third one.
Yeah. And then we're on Insta at Cerberus Trillion. We're on Snap at Certrill. That's CERTRILL.
We have a website, which is cerberustrillion.com, and it is under construction. So yeah, go check that out if you want to see a website under construction. It's always a fun thing. Then we got Cerberus Trillion YouTube channel, which we will be, posting various things on there. Right now, we got the podcast up there if you're looking for a visual way to see the podcast. And then we've got our dev blog on Medium, which is Cerberus Trillion. We've got our Facebook page, which is also Cerberus Trillion. Discord, which is Cerberus Trillion. And eventually we will get into doing live streams.
And guess what? That's also Cerberus Trillion. You know it. Yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob, for coming on.
Yes, thank you, Jacob. Holy shit. Yes, thank you, Jacob.
God, you're welcome.
We we're glad to have you on again. Any last remarks? Do you want to? This is your time for any shameless plugs.
Well, I will say, guys, it's very inspirational to see you guys doing this, and I've been really wrestling with deciding whether I was going to start a YouTube channel about me essentially just doing what I want to do, because I've learned from YouTube, no one really wants to watch what you do if you're not passionate about it, and I can definitely tell you guys are passionate about it. So that was inspirational to see. I think literally tonight I'm going to go home and I'm going to start reviewing games. So thank you for that inspiration, guys. And it was a pleasure. If I had a shameless plug, you know what? I would give a shameless plug out to I'm going to give my shameless plug out to a video game studio. I want to say, go check out Fantastic Yes's puzzle game, Returner 77, and tell us what you think as far as their whole philosophy of trying to pump out AAA level, high tier, super quality, free, not free anymore, pay $4 on the App Store, premium games. it's a really interesting concept, and I'd be interested to see if you guys think they're pulling it off well, and if you think they'll be successful. So yeah, shameless plug there.
Yeah, no, that's
right.
that's good. Let us know, guys.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's the episode. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.